Honorable members, excellencies, distinguished guests, what a great privilege it is to be here to close this wonderful event, sensing the wonderful world you see today in Nepal. I wish I could be there with you, but conditions and my situation wouldn't allow me to come out there. However, it's a great privilege for me to be here to extend some thoughts related to accessibility to people with disabilities, particularly those who are blind or without vision, as well as others with disabilities, including the deaf and individuals with physical disabilities. Before I get started with my closing thoughts, I did want to offer special thanks, of course, to the hotel and their staff for hosting a wonderful event today, to all the musicians who played wonderful music and set the tone for our event today, and of course to my dear friend Sarah Geary, who helped sponsor and coordinate this event. And a special note of thanks to my longtime colleague and friend, Joel Snyder, who I'm sure was able to teach many wonderful things in terms of technology that is available today, particularly in areas that support the blind, low vision, and individuals without hearing, the deaf and hard of hearing. I've been in the technology field of accessibility for pretty close to 40 years now. And one thing I've noticed is that there's essentially been three waves of technology in terms of service to people with disabilities. By waves, I mean generations. There's been a time very early on where we focused mostly on the rehabilitation of individuals with disabilities, as well as ensuring that buildings and other areas of entrance, homes, and public facilities were able to accommodate individuals with disabilities. And that became a big focus in the world of people with disabilities and their ability to be able to go and exchange and otherwise live normal lives. The second wave really focused on the education and employment opportunities of individuals with disabilities. And we started to touch on the field of computers and working on aspects of technology early on to ensure that people with disabilities could use these technologies, could be employed in order to support their families or support themselves, and of course, got a better quality education. But today we're in the third wave, and that third wave is much different. It's more along the lines of emerging technology. It's very ubiquitous in nature. By that I mean that everywhere we go today, we can talk about technology that is accessible to people with disabilities. And most countries, most nations throughout the world recognize the importance of doing so, of accommodating users, of accommodating their citizens with technology. That technology is focused on the user, the person. It is more user-centered. It is designed so that it is more inclusive. So many things that are designed for just about any type of person can use them, whether they have a disability or they don't. Well, where does that leave us today? And what will you take away from the program that you've experienced today? Well, I believe that we're going to see, or we're on the cusp of seeing, major changes throughout the world. 5 specific areas, I like to call them spectrums of change, that will advance the needs of people with disabilities, and again, with particular focus on those who are blind and low vision, but also, quite importantly, touching on some other areas, key areas of disability that I believe will become more profoundly affected even than what we're experiencing today for those that are blind and deaf. So let me list those 5 areas of change, and then I'll just talk about each one just for a minute. So those 5 areas are The adoption of businesses and industry, especially in the high-tech field, uh, of accessibility as a key feature, a key facet, an asset of what they sell or what they build. The second is the harmonization of laws and standards regarding technology. So, for many years, we've had different laws, different standards across different nations, but they weren't harmonized, they didn't join together. That's the second spectrum of change. Third, I believe that we are moving towards, and no doubt you've experienced this, a different type of interaction, a method for um, life, and we like to call user interfaces, and that is a voice I/O. So today it's much more common to be speaking or talking to devices, technologies. And so I believe that voice um, input output interface will become the next wave, if you will, of technology that we're going to have to work on in terms of change and accessibility for people with disabilities. The fourth area is the emergence of inclusive software that in many ways replaces hardware technologies or hardware solutions that we see that are quite prevalent in the world today. And then the fifth area is one that I'm quite personally proud of because I believe it's something that my company and the professionals in the world, including Joel himself, have worked on quite heartily over these last few years. And that is rather than working or focusing on accessibility to people with disabilities, we're focusing on the user experience or AUX, accessible user experience. That is, when we design things, we're designing them for the user so that it meets their needs and is more enjoyable for them to use, more pragmatic and practical for them to use. So let me again just go over those 5 areas and just add a little bit more detail. It'll give you some insight into where the world is going today in the technology field. So that first spectrum of change was business and industry and high tech, investing in accessibility. Today, if you look around, no doubt, you see large multinational companies like Sony, Microsoft, Google, Apple, Amazon, who have made huge investments, monetary investments, to ensure that the technologies that they build, whether they're smart homes or smartphones, or those technologies have built-in accessibility. And they have that because these companies are seeing the importance of accommodating all consumers, all people, all users. And hopefully that will reach your area of the world in Nepal. No doubt you've already experienced it in one form or another. Second, very important, generally speaking, when it comes to technology, we have standards. And those standards are designed to provide direction and guidance on how to build or how to design things. And the same is true in the technology field. But for years, I've been in the field for 40 years, and for probably 30 of those years, these standards have been written by different organizations. They have been promulgated by different countries and different nations, and they haven't really worked together. Very common is the standards for creating just typical everyday things for people in the world don't work well with the specialized devices, the assistive technologies, for example, that people with disabilities use. So what we're starting to witness now is the harmonization, the bringing together of those standards so that they are accepted all over the world and that they meet the needs of industry for the mainstream population, but at the same time they are compatible with and work with the technologies of people with disabilities. It's a very exciting area, and again, over the last several years, we've seen the growth of these standards and the coming together of nations working together. Even in Nepal, the adoption of certain laws that have been promulgated by the United Nations in terms of the rights of people with disabilities, and there are technology standards there that are promoted to, again, ensure that people with disabilities can use the technologies that are available to everyone today. So those standards are really critical and really important, and we'll see a greater harmonization of them. I mentioned the third area was what I call voice I/O, or voice input output. That is uh, things that you talk to and things that talk back to you. And today we see around the world, again, these types of devices that are available through the companies like Amazon and Apple and Microsoft and Google. These attendants, these special assistants and attendants that you can talk to and talk back to, they will become the new normal, if you will, in the way that we interact with technologies today. So we're moving away from keyboards and a mouse, perhaps with computer technologies, or even touch interfaces that we touch things in one form or another, or touch screens, for example, on your mobile devices, to interfaces that require that we talk to them and then it speaks back to us, which are wonderful, with the exception of what if you are a deaf individual? How do you interact with that type of device? How does it accommodate your needs? Or perhaps you're an individual who is not able to speak because of your disability, not able to talk. Or maybe the way that you talk is not as clear because you have perhaps a condition like Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis. These are very common disabilities in the world today. How will those devices understand you? This, I believe, becomes the next big challenge for us in the disability world. And I'm looking forward to working with colleagues like Joel and others to find solutions that will accommodate all individuals with disabilities. That fourth area, the emergence of inclusive software, kind of complements the first area of industry's investment. But in this case, my hope is that we will begin to see the operating environments of technologies that are very common to us, and we already are, that will easily and more easily accommodate people with disabilities. Let me give you an example. If you have a computer, if you have a laptop, a mobile device, a tablet, the companies who build those devices and design the software on those devices are now building things into that software to ensure that the device works better for people with disabilities. So today, people who are blind can use a smart device, a smartphone, a touch screen, because of the way that it's designed so that it adapts. iPhones, for example, are a great example of a device that uses haptics and shaking and gestures that a blind person can more easily use. That is, again, becoming the new norm when companies, technology companies in particular, create these devices and they design accessibility or accommodations for people with disabilities into the actual product that they're building. So very exciting. Again, it's becoming a new wave, a new norm. And all of this, I believe fully, is because of a movement within the technology industry, particularly from what we used to call assistive or adaptive technology and accessible technology that really was fixed, if you will, or appended with things that help people with disabilities to a design that is centered around, or at least features the needs of people with disabilities. And that's what I call an accessible user experience. So the more that we study humans and we study human behavior and we study the behavior of individuals with disabilities and whatever walk of life that they are in, the things that we create and the things that we design are designed to accommodate their needs just as well as we accommodate the needs of individuals without disabilities. Sensing the world you see today is just a first step, I believe, in looking forward to what you can achieve there in Nepal. And I believe with continued promotion of and building awareness and education of these kind of elements, well, then we will end up with a world that'll be much more accommodating to all individuals. Along those lines, I'd like to again thank you for your time today, and I hope that you'll enjoy the rest of your conference.